Hello, this is Tom and Carissa on Tentacles, the podcast from Crown and Reach. We are feeling our way through the murky waters of strategy and operations in an uncertain world.
And I have major deja vu today.
Oh yeah?
Because we're back to having a baby in a buggy.
Whoa!
Pounding the streets of Bournemouth, praying that nap time lasts longer than 5 minutes. The toddler is happy at his forest school today.
Yep.
And we've got a 1-month-old here.
And we've had several aborted attempts to try to record a podcast over the past couple of weeks.
I've lost count now.
Yeah. But little baby has not been up for it. So we'll see how we go today. We'll get as far as we can. She might wake up. That's okay.
It's all part of the excitement of Tentacles, isn't it?
It is. It's a world of uncertainty.
Right, and speaking of uncertainty, I'm uncertain what we're even talking about. I think you've got a plan.
I've got a plan. I'm obviously... should we just let's do some more AI.
Oh no.
But there's an interesting twist, I think, that's happening. For a long time, so let's set the scene. For a long time, I think it's fair to say that you and I have been arguing for companies to take a more ecological / evolutionary approach to software and product development, while the dominant model in most of the industry has remained set in a sort of factory metaphor. Shipping things, putting stuff out, making it like a production line where you pass from one employee to another and try to increase the rate of putting stuff out into
efficiency gains.
Exactly. And what's been clear for a couple of decades now is that shipping more features does not correlate with more success.
What about, sorry to kind of derail things immediately. Yep. What about the idea that if you just do a lot of things, try lots of stuff, something might stick?
Well, that is the default strategy, isn't it? The default strategy for most companies, if we can just do all of the things, then that will also include the things that we needed to do. And it feels much easier to just do all of the things than it does to figure out which of the things matter. But the problem with that is it makes a mistake about where the bottleneck is. And I think that's one of the first interesting things that AI or LLM powered coding has shown up first. The real bottleneck was never actually shipping things. The real bottleneck was never writing the code. It looked like it, and it was very nice for execs to point fingers at the coders.
If only it was that, because that would be a simple problem to solve.
It would. But what we're seeing now, there was that interesting study that I shared with you recently that we haven't talked about yet on the podcast, where the number of apps being launched on app stores has, I think, at least doubled, if not more, since the LLM coding sort of burst happened. Pretty much earlier this year was when it really started to take off. So that's happened, but the number of apps that actually get adopted, that get used and get any reviews and all that sort of stuff hasn't moved at all.
It stayed exactly the same.
Yep.
Wow, okay. So, that's such a nice fact to tie up with a ribbon on it.
The bottleneck is the scarce attention of humans at the end of the puzzle. And so what's happening now with, apparently, it seems that shipping code, just generating lines of code, even if it's not brilliant quality, has become way, way faster, easier. It's not necessarily cheaper, it turns out, because now tokens a lot of the big foundation models or frontier models are charging based on the amount of tokens you use, rather than giving you a free loads of extra tokens for fun.
So a cynical view is like, the loss leader pricing has got everyone hooked, and now you pay the real price.
That's right.
Ha-ha!
So that's been their model, and we can come back to that because there's an interesting twist in that tale as well. But anyway, the point is you can ship more software now, but all that's happening is then more stuff is arriving at the attention gate of humans somewhere along the line, and so less of that stuff is getting through.
Interestingly, this is just wild conjecture, but I wonder if it's almost backfiring and people are like, I'm fed up of things and people and corporations vying for my attention, and I'm sort of checking out of even looking at my phone.
There's definitely some of that happening. on the flip side, there is an acceleration of AI-generated UGC, or user-generated content. So then we're looking at you can look at the sort of, I don't know, the craftsperson world of people who like things that are human-made and with a lot of thought behind them, etc., etc. And the sorts of people who are on Reddit's Buy It for Life subreddit.
Yep.
So they are probably increasingly tuning out of smartphones, tuning out of social media, blah, 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 and looking for signals in the real world, going back to real shops, talking to real people, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you and I both quite enjoy a bit of Buy It for Life.
We do, and a bit of r/dumb phone as well. Meanwhile, there's still a huge market in cheap, fairly poor quality, mass-produced goods and sort of consumer rubbish. That doesn't seem to have slowed down. If anything, that's accelerated. And what can now happen is that where there's always been a market for companies who are making like bottom of the barrel products, like gambling or sort of sex bots or stuff like that, bottom of the barrel things.
Yeah, what's the new thing? Amazon. We talked about it with a
Amazon
family
Haul.
member the other day. Amazon Haul, would that fall into that category as well?
Probably would, yeah.
Which is it's stuff that even Amazon can't get
Can't
rid
shift.
of. So it's like, here, have a bundle of our least wanted crap. Here you go.
Yeah, we're having a warehouse clear out.
Mm.
That seems to be the thing, isn't it? So there's always been a market for those sorts of companies to basically pay people to create user-generated content. People enthusiastically saying things like, this is really good, this has changed my life, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. All that sort of fun stuff. I made loads of money on this gambling app. You could have it too. Look, it pays out. No worries. All that sort of nonsense, which I'm sure you've seen if you've been online.
Yeah.
But there's a limit to how much you can get even the most craven person to say. But there's no such limit with AI-generated people.
Because the AIs are infinite.
They're infinite, and you can just, tell them to say whatever you want. And so there's now, it seems, an explosion of this AI user-generated content. So there's no actual people involved, but it's just a flood of these sorts of adverts that still create the impression of social proof in the end human. And so you end up then with companies, unscrupulous companies perhaps, just shipping loads of rubbish products using this fake AI-generated content in order to advertise it.
Right, so what you're saying is, for the time being at least, this fake AI-generated quote-unquote user content is still working.
It is, yeah. But the big picture with that is it's all just a race for the bottom, because as more of the advertising space is flooded with that, which has the idea is a lower and lower cost per acquisition of customer, it gets flooded and then it becomes a hard market to win. And
right, I mean, it reminds me of the journey that real, person-written reviews went on, which was in the early days of online reviews. They were really effective, and now it's all like incentivized reviews. I don't know where I've got this from. I feel like it's true that reviews are just less effective now, because everyone kind of knows that a lot of the reviews have been incentivized. People have been given free stuff to say nice things, Yeah.
Or they've now been written by bots as well.
But that feels like the evolution of that, right?
Yeah.
In the recent year.
Exactly, yeah. And before that even, they were written by people in content farms, that sort of thing.
So it's just the next logical step on that lovely journey.
It's a lovely journey, isn't it? So we're sort of seeing then the dead internet theory come to life more and more, while then there's this withdrawal from the dead internet of some people. We've gone a little bit off track here, haven't we? But it's all, this is all like,
lost.
I think what we're doing today is we're just running through some of the narratives that are going on at the moment when it comes to AI type stuff, which I think is illustrative of the moment we're in, because we've simultaneously got that world of algorithmic slop generation. We've also got big companies who tried we're shifting to full AI coding, and they went all in on it, and now that created such a cost drain for the big frontier models, Anthropic and OpenAI, and to some extent Copilot, that they couldn't afford to keep running like that, and they've had to switch to token-based pricing, which has now forced the issue for these big companies who are trying to go all AI. They now can't afford it. So one company ran out of their entire 2026 budget by April.
Oops.
And had to rethink everything. And everybody else who was in this sort of token maxing phase, just use as many tokens as you can, is now starting to budget tokens and being much more firm about it. What seems to be happening here is those big companies, they were trying for the model that you mentioned earlier. Let's get everyone hooked on it. Let's make sure it's super cheap, and so every company starts depending on it fully, and it replaces loads of jobs, and it works better than the people in the first place. And then when we put the prices up, the companies won't have a choice. They have to go with it. But because the costs are so extreme, it looks like these big frontier models have, number one, been forced to raise the prices before everyone's fully hooked. So they might be shooting themselves in the foot there. And number two, it doesn't look like these AI things are actually replacing that many jobs. They're just not actually capable enough yet with the current situation.
And what are you basing that on?
Basing that on, there's a bunch of studies that are showing that the job replacement theory is not actually coming true right now. What we're probably looking at with the job market is a correction from overhiring during COVID, plus a move by the shareholding class, capital, to deliberately try to depress the wages of the worker class, which has happened multiple times before. There was a big one in the 80s and the 90s. And so the AI is a useful excuse for this sort of action to try to make everybody afraid for their job, basically. So they'll accept lower wages and push back less.
Interesting. So I'm now remembering one of our most recent podcasts where we talked about how AI does seem to be quite good at replacing very junior people. Would you now say that that's not happening as much as we thought a couple of months ago?
I think that, there's another narrative that is floating around. I think, yes, there is a chance that AI is still good at replacing juniors, which creates some other downstream issues or upstream issues. What that means is now people who were doing jobs where they enjoyed doing the work are forced into a role where they're instead managing teams of total juniors who forget everything every night and so can't ever learn. There's no rewarding learning process training these juniors up. You're just managing a bunch of forgetful squirrels every day.
Sounds highly unrewarding.
That seems to be the theme that people are saying. There is this sense of burnout, which I'm seeing reported from other places, where now you have to do so much more, you're expected to deliver loads more, but you've got fewer people available, and so now you're having to run these teams of agents, and now there's a squeeze on the cost of them, and the whole thing, there's a lot of pressure there that's not really working very well. Meanwhile, when you look at what AIs can do, they tend to be measured much more on tasks rather than on jobs. And a job or a job role is a bundle of tasks, always has been. And part of that job is having discernment over which tasks to do when, how to sequence those tasks, how to combine them, all those sorts of ideas. And that discernment layer doesn't seem to be tackled by LLMs.
Well, that reminds me of an episode of our podcast from perhaps a year ago.
Yep.
Was it the Strategy Cargo Net? I can't remember what the title was, but about how you can be strategic at a micro level based on, how you decide to spend the next hour of your time at work.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, I think that kind of makes me, what you just said makes me think of how humans can be quite good at doing that, whereas AI, not so much.
Yes, I think that's fair. There was another really interesting study which pointed out that if you ask AI for strategy advice specifically, what you get back is what the researchers called trend slop. So across a bunch of different dimensions of what you might choose to do in terms of your strategy, like shall we centralise or decentralise? Shall we invest for the long term or invest for the short term? Shall we focus on user needs or focus on supply chains? Across all of those dimensions, all of the frontier models chose the same strategies every time, regardless of, I think it was something like 1,400 different contexts that the AIs were provided with.
Well, how can that be? Like, what's happened algorithmically that's where it goes?
The AIs have been trained on the content on the internet.
Yeah.
So the popular strategies that a lot of people have written about are the ones that are most likely to be recommended.
Okay, but there are different... I mean, people on the internet do sometimes say different things. It's interesting that everything kind of draws exactly the same conclusions.
It's a really interesting conclusion, isn't it? So there's two levels. Number one, they've all been trained on the what's on the internet already, which tends to massively outweigh or be overweighted towards the comment sections of Reddit and other places. And number two, they've then had human reinforcement learning. So then when the AI suggests things back, the ideology or ethos of the people who are making these tools gets reflected very strongly in them. So actually this
begs a bigger question, which is exposing my lack of knowledge about AI compared to your fairly vast knowledge of it.
Vast but bitty.
Vast but bitty. Would that be true for anything? So anything, any like question that you put in any domain, will you always get back the same answers, or does that sometimes not happen?
So here's the fun twist on it. So what the researchers tried to do is see if they give radically different context, if they try different things to get the LLMs to spit out a different strategy recommendation at least. Not one that they're testing whether it's right or not, but they're just seeing, can we get it to say something different? The thing that had the most impact on whether it would say something different was which order you put the options in. So if you suggested centralisation first versus decentralisation first, it would give you different answers, which isn't how humans think. Like that's not the thinking process you'd want it to take, is it?
Although, I mean, there is I forget the name of all the different biases, but saliency,
and then you might see like peak end rule happening in humans, so it kind of availability heuristic.
Kind of, you can prime a human to think of something first. Like, that's possible.
You can, but then we could go on a whole big rant into the Gary Klein stuff we were talking about the other day.
Yeah, come on, baby, sleep for another hour, please.
I think we'll put a pin in that for next time.
All right,
because we could look, how do expert humans make decisions in a way that's different from what LLMs are doing? Because one of the big things you realise with LLMs is they don't actually have a perspective. And so what you can do is prompt them to try any strategy, and they will yes and you, tell you on the one hand it's great, on the other hand it's bad, depending on what you're priming them to do for you. But they won't be able to tell you what strategy is actually a good strategy in your situation. That's something you're going to have to do.
Yeah, it reminds me of the expert panel AI usage, which I think we have found useful and is still useful.
Yeah, the ritual descent.
Ritual descent, yeah. So assembling a panel of experts based on, real people who've written real stuff and have very different perspectives and opinions on things and will disagree about stuff, and get them to kind of give you a critique, which does try to force different opinions and different thoughts on what the best way forward would be.
It does, yeah. The way we set it up is give the cast of characters, which are all these different experts with different perspectives. So you can pick people who are famous enough and well published enough that it can scrape their actual words.
Yeah, there's enough words out there that it's not just putting words in their mouth.
Potentially, yeah. Though it does start doing that pretty quickly.
Well, that's what I was going to say as well is that it falls apart pretty quickly. I remember reading your transcripts of this expert ritual descent panel thing.
Yeah.
And it starts off really
The first
helpful,
burst is amazing.
and then it gradually just loses its mind.
Yeah.
I mean, it just kind of becomes unfollowable. People start contradicting themselves.
Yep. Becomes incoherent.
Incoherent and actually kind of more unhelpful than not doing it at all, I personally found. If I read the whole transcript, it's like you said, I think the first round is helpful, but
Yes.
just stop at that point. Don't keep
I would
going.
say that is the right way to play it, and start a fresh session where it's just figuring it out, and that's how you'd use the method that it's based on, which is called ritual descent, is that you do just get one round of that feedback and you're not allowed to respond to it. You have to go back and rework your thing entirely and then go to a new group of people to hear their unfiltered feedback with your back turned. That's the ritual part of it. So the idea is, the idea with ritual descent, this is a Dave Snowden method. If you've given a presentation in a boardroom or something, that people will be nodding and smiling politely in the room mostly. They might challenge a little bit, but they're not going to say what they really think. What you want to hear is the stuff that they would say afterwards in the kitchen when the filters are off.
Knives are out.
Saying what they really think. And so ritual descent is a way to get some of that vibe. What we do with our AI-based prompt, which if you want it, I'm happy to share this prompt. It's a little bit old now and it might be a bit not cool to share prompts anymore, but one thing that we do is make the setting a pub and they're all a couple of drinks in, just trying to
get the filter off.
Yeah, because it basically writes out a script to a play, doesn't it, with all these characters in, and because they're a bit drunk,
and it did work.
I mean,
I do remember I was the first time I read through one of these transcripts, I was like, wow, you really did manage to make them all be quite rude. They're not being sycophantic, you've really managed to turn that that aspect of AI off well and truly.
Yeah, that was good.
I think there was even some swearing. I was like, oof, wow, they think that what we've proposed is so stupid that they're swearing at us. This is amazing.
A particular foible of ours that we like that sort of thing. So anyway, you've got all of those issues with strategy, etc., etc. Now, there is somewhere that all of this points for where AI might be going next that I think is interesting. And we've shared some rubrics before for where in your corporate world should you use AI for coding your own stuff. And we talked about Jeff and how Jeff used to work on spreadsheets.
Yes.
But now he might be vibe coding tools and things like that. And I've definitely met plenty of people who've vibe coded their own tools.
Tiny useful tools, right?
Tiny boring tools.
Tiny boring tools.
Or boring tiny tools.
Boring tiny
that's
tools.
The coinage. So that's a Vaughan Tan idea. And his fundamental insight is this is not about taking jobs, because there are sorts of software project which nobody does at the moment. It's just not financially viable for a small business to pay for somebody to build this boring tiny tool. So they don't. And it's not financially viable for a SaaS company to build it because it's too idiosyncratic, it's too small, it's too niche for it to make a worthwhile business model that could get funded. But now that a single person can potentially sit down for an afternoon and prompt a chat box to vibe code some boring tiny tool for them, it becomes worthwhile. But it's not taken any developer's job. It's added to the mountain of code slop that's out there.
But also with the cost of AI going up, maybe it's no longer so no-brainer.
Exactly. So that's where there's a really interesting twist in the whole thing, which is, what was it that actually made AI coding tools better? It wasn't the quality of the frontier models. So the frontier models have reached a point of diminishing returns where adding more training data doesn't seem to meaningfully leap up the quality as much as it used to. What really shifted that made Claude Code break out in late 2025, early 2026, and what's making the other coding tools work is the harness. So they've written basically a computer program on top of the LLM model, which basically is, here's how you write a program. And at its simplest level, it gets the LLM to break down a bigger task into smaller chunks, and then it gets each of those small chunks, it goes and says, right, LLM number 1, how would you do this? And it goes and comes up with a plan. It gets another LLM to check the plan. Does that make sense? Is there something wrong with it? So it does a bit of checking. Then it gets another LLM, like an agentic one, to execute the plan. So it starts to do this looped harness thing.
Right, and it's like back to the The halcyon days of test-driven development.
That kind of thing. But what becomes, and this is where I think it gets really interesting. So point number one is you don't need the frontier models to get a good result if you've got this harness. So what people are starting to do is take their harness and plug in open source free models, which aren't quite as good as the frontier models, but are a fraction of the cost. You can buy a Mac Mini and run it on your own machine. And it's maybe like 90% as good, but the harness is doing the work of getting rid of the rubbish work, testing it, and just it's like you're automatically pulling a slot machine, and then the system is not counting anything that isn't a win and only letting through the wins.
Sounds too good to be true.
It does, and it might be too good to be true. We're still, I think, at the early days of where this coding technology will go. I would agree with Simon Wardley's prediction that we're probably going to be looking at 2029, 2030 before how this works properly actually settles down enough. But this idea of using open source, way cheaper models suddenly turns the whole thing into something that's actually practical at a cost basis. So that's one thing. And the second thing that's interesting loops back to where we started this whole conversation, which is the potential shift from a factory model into more of an evolutionary model. And this was inspired by two things that I saw. So this is weak signals still, but I think it's interesting to consider.
We'll indulge you, Tom.
Do indulge me, I love being indulged. So one was, there was a guy who had tried all LLM coding before and looked at the code and thought it was slop and didn't like it. But then he took a little bit of a project, some project that was too hard for him to code. He couldn't understand how to make sense of it. And so he thought, well, let's throw that at the LLM tools. But what he did that was interesting was he specified the constraints around it. So this is what it needs to do. Mm-hmm. And then...
and that's different to giving it a prompt.
A bit different from giving it a prompt. So when you're prompting these things, and I might be talking way out over my skis here, there are two sort of failure modes. One is you don't give it enough context, so you're just prompting, and basically you're just pulling the handle once and you get what you get. Mm-hmm. And it's at best it's about 80% of what you need, and then trying to tweak it to get that final 20% becomes incredibly expensive, sucks up all of your time, and this is where a lot of the productivity gains just get eaten up.
Right.
Or you have to get a traditional human coder to go and read through the slop code and try and figure it out so that they can fix the bugs, and they can't because it's too bad. So that's one mistake, not enough context. The other mistake is too much context. So if you over-specify, then the thing gets stuck, crashes out, and you get a worse result. So there's kind of a sweet spot of constraining it just enough, but not too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm with you. You.
And I remember the guy who was doing this coding thing used the corollary with robotics and how, while we've done a lot of clever stuff with robots, we haven't managed to make a robot hand. So like our hands clearly work very well. Robots, they can't build a robot hand deliberately by doing this. But clearly we've been able to evolve a hand. So there's something about the evolutionary approach that has got us to a better solution than the engineering approach did in that case.
Well, was it... I'm probably talking way out over my skis as well, but like robots couldn't walk or run, but now they can.
Yeah.
Is it not the same with hands?
Well, then you've got a question of how much is that walking and running based on evolutionary algorithms rather than human-coded algorithms or human-made mechanisms. And this is where I don't know the full details either, but I gather, my belief is that a lot of the robotics advancements are by forcing the robotic algorithms to evolve in the right ways. Now you get to a challenge there if you're using LLMs, in that they will also cheat. So there are those famous experiments before where they had a this was a really early experiment in this, evolutionary algorithms, computer program where you had a simple model that was trying to create a walking creature. And it was basically a game for who can get over the line fastest. That was your sort of evolutionary fitness algorithm or your metric that you were going for. And then you'd start with a blob, and then you'd keep changing the parameters with each generation, and some of them might evolve legs and some of them might evolve to wriggle like snakes and stuff like that. What ended up winning was just one that grew really tall and fell over.
Such a great punchline. Yeah. Cheating, quote unquote. It's a perfectly valid solution.
Which is exactly what evolution does as well. Like, real evolution cheats where it can. The problem is you can't cheat the real world, but you can cheat a map of the real world, if you know what I mean. Reality has a surprising amount of detail. So you can't encode all of that necessarily into your computer program.
Yeah.
And there are tricks that some of the agentic coding bots do where you set up a load of tests and then you try to get the code to work towards those tests. But the agent cunningly rewrites the tests for you to make them easier to pass. So you've got to be really careful about that sort of thing. So that's one example, this guy who then set his constraints and managed to evolve a piece of software that he couldn't have written himself. Was it perfect? No, but it worked. And the code maybe under the hood looked horrible, but it worked. And maybe that's what you need, actually.
And can you just sum up how that's different to the first thing that you talked about? That I can't remember what it was.
The first thing.
This is the sleep deprivation coming into play. Yeah, I don't
so this
know.
we're still on, I think, the first example, which was the guy talking about just enough context.
Yeah, okay, so that was it. So too little context and too much context. Yeah, cool. And this is how to give it just enough context.
Yeah.
But how would you sum up the last 5 minutes? Like, what did he do?
What did he do? Well, this is where we get to the other point, which was a Venkatesh Rao little note or something on Substack. And he was talking about how the idea of one-shotting is silly. And this is an idea where there's a game that coders are doing apparently where you try to just write the perfect prompt first time so that you get exactly the software you want out of the other end. And his take is, no, if you're doing anything interesting at all, one-shotting is it's like a teenage fantasy. That's not how it works. The trick, if there is a trick, is that you are iteratively searching for the right set of context that gets you what you actually want.
Right, so it's almost like you've got to do a shitty first draft, just like if you were writing something.
Yep.
Do the first thing, you're going to get it wrong, but in getting it wrong, you'll find out what needs to change.
Yeah.
Got it.
And Rao's point was, you've finished the project when you have understood the problem definition well enough to put the right constraints in. And that's something you discover by trying a bunch of stuff and figuring out where it's going wrong, where it's going right, where you need to pull back, where you need to give it more space, all those sorts of things, which is much more like changing the evolutionary potential of the landscape and seeing what evolves than it is like trying to write a specification. Does that land?
Yeah. So 2 questions. 1, how does all of this loop back to what we were talking about at the beginning? And 2, putting on my devil's advocate hat, like why can't you just do a really good prompt and do it in one go? Like, what if you just could write a good prompt? You know what needs to go in it.
Well, I think there you get to the world of if it's something that's well understood and you've done it loads of times before and you know what you need to prompt and what you want is well represented in the data space that exists, yeah, you can probably write one prompt and it'll do something that's good enough.
Right, so it's like, are you trying to do something that has been done before and is knowable?
Yeah.
Right, okay, cool. Yeah, I could hear people kind of saying, but what if you just can get it right in one go? And like, clearly sometimes things can be done in one go.
Sometimes they can, but that plays a little bit into what I think has been like an exec fantasy for a very long time.
Because
that we just wish it into being and then it will happen in the
Right,
way that we've got in our head.
And it's a bit of a sort of hackneyed cliche, like we are living in an increasingly complex world, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're just the number of simple problems to solve, they've all been solved.
Yep.
And now most of the stuff that keeps people busy is just not simple.
Yep. And what people seem to be doing vastly often with these coding agent situations is generating games that aren't much fun for very long. Like, they're good demos, but you wouldn't want to play them because they've got no soul. Or generating more of the same sort of stuff we've already got, like note-taking apps, to-do apps, stuff like that, where there's already millions of them, so it's well represented in the code base.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Which gets us to another challenge, which is pushing the latent space of LLMs to actually do something novel. That might be where where it all breaks down. But it's not clear yet that is the case. You might be able to figure out the right constraints to push something new to be tried.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, to be continued.
To be continued.
And
But what I see is interesting about that is looping right back to the beginning.
There we go. I can hear the baby starting to stir. I'm like, let's
So it's the time to
tie
wrap
this up nicely.
But looping right back to the beginning, we have been, in most organisations, still locked in this factory metaphor for how you generate code, or a house building metaphor where you draw out a plan and then you just lay the bricks and it works. But actually, software doesn't work like that. And it tends to create really bad software that gets old and rotten very quickly. Whereas what we've done with LLMs in the first place is grow code. And what those LLMs are potentially going to be good at doing when they're properly harnessed with a proper cost structure and the right way of evolving constraints around them is creating a situation where we can grow all software. And so it becomes more like gardening.
It's a more of an emergent process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emergent and iterative process, which is what we've been arguing for many years. But
Banging that
tends
drum
to be
to death.
Tends to be resisted in a lot of organisations because
always,
planning.
though.
Not always.
Not
no.
always.
No.
But when they do resist, it's because planning
is really, really tempting.
Yeah.
And it's long been the case that good management and funding cycles depend on predictability, whereas good innovation depends on surprise. And so they don't really go together.
Right, and that would take us on to uncertainty bubbles, which we don't have time for right now.
Not right now.
But there will be more of that popping up in the near future.
And I'm going to put a pin in this, like a flag in this at least, as saying this is an interesting direction of travel that I see weak signals for. And just to summarise what I'm saying with this, I think it looks like something in the realm of a harness for coding is going to continue to be useful, but what we're going to see is an increasing use of locally run open source models that are as near to free as possible, minus energy cost and compute costs and stuff like that, rather than the big frontier models that are going to become unsustainable. And we're going to see a gradual shift towards a more evolutionary approach to coding with these. And one of the big reasons that coding works well and other forms of expression don't is that coding has like a yes-no switch. It passes the test or it doesn't, and you can test that instantly, whereas something like copy for marketing or something like that has a much longer cycle for testing. So it becomes much harder to test.
Right, and that's because it depends on how it's received by a human being.
Yep, and the context will shift as well over time, and the attention window from humans is not getting any bigger. So there is a real hard limitation to that, where it probably becomes too expensive to test human attention-based ideas, and you'll still need to do something that's much more qualitative and more the sorts of stuff that we do, which is very biased reasoning, very motivated reasoning. What we do is specifically important to keep human, you see.
We don't stray into that territory very often. I think we can let it slide for today. And we will be sure to revisit this prediction. How soon should we revisit it?
2029?
2029. Great. Well, you've had a great time. I don't know.
And you've had a nice time listening and pushing the
I've let
buggy.
it wash over me. It's been lovely. But yes, you're doing very well given how little sleep we've had.
It's been a little bit of a low sleep time. And maybe this didn't make any sense to you, dear listener. If you have seen examples in the real world that either support or contradict this, please do let us know. As we said earlier in the episode, we really like hearing what you're really thinking. So do tell us if we're talking absolute nonsense, or if you think we're onto something.
What's the email address?
Tentacles@crownandreach.com.
Drop us a line.